Oakland Heritage Alliance 2024 Annual Business Meeting and Lecture. I hereby call the Oakland Heritage Alliance 2024 Annual Business Meeting to order. Before we turn to the vote for the Board of Directors, I'd like to introduce you to Daniel Levy. Daniel, to whom I'm handing over the presidential reins of OHA. This is a case of out with the old and in with the new. And now, I turn the meeting over to Daniel.
All right. Thank you all for this opportunity to serve as Oakland Heritage Alliance president. And first of all, I definitely want to thank our outgoing president, Mary Harper, for all of her work. Also want to thank Allison Finley as vice president, who's our outgoing vice president, and Charles Booker, who is our secretary, and who also runs our lectures. So thanks to Charles and Allison. Mary has championed many projects to move Oakland heritage forward, including plaques, newsletter digitization, the Posey Tube tours, running our board meetings, keeping our office operational, and just taking really a lot of ownership over everything that she does. I've been on the board of directors since 2015, grew up in Oakland, and had an electric railroad fascination. During the day, I work for Expedia as a software developer in San Francisco, but on nights and weekends, I, along with the rest of our great board, work for you all, our lovely members. Over the years, I have served through many of our committees, walking tours, preservation, lectures, and now feel ready to take on the role as president. Mary will transition to the vice president role. Naomi Schiff will take the charge of the secretary role, and Felicia over here, Felicia Favroff, will take on the role of treasurer. Our small but mighty board punches above its weight, but we must do even more as an organization to serve you, our members. To do more, we plan to bring more people into the organization via increased visibility of our work by building out our committees. Much of this work has already started today with a more robust Our Work section on our website to showcase what our committees do and how you all can get involved with that. We will be posting our board agendas and minutes on our website as well, so you can be more familiar with the direction and activities of the organization. And once that phase is complete, we will be making some more concrete asks to you all to get involved and to be a part of shaping OHA's future together. So thank you all for, again, Mary, for your work as OHA president. I have something for you. If you'd like to come up and receive some flowers. All right, where was I? And for you all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any ideas or feedback about the direction of the organization. All right, moving on to the more business part of our meeting, we have a few items to discuss tonight, including the survey results that we sent out to you all, our financial information, and then the board election. And then we have a wonderful presentation by Arrol Gellner over here about travel trailers. FYI, Laura, our great staff person, is recording this meeting so that people who didn't make it can check it out. Okay, so for the survey, we sent out a member survey along with the proxy letters to you all, and thank you all for those who filled it out. We received about 30 responses and 6 electronic responses. The top member benefits that people liked were, you guessed it, newsletter, walking tours, and the lecture, so we will definitely continue with those activities. And then we got some good suggestions, which were connecting with schools, creating booklets for the walking tours so people could maybe take them on their own, and then wanting more member-only events. If you've not filled out the survey, we do have some copies here if you'd like to fill it out, and there's also a QR code on it as well if you'd like to do it electronically. Okay. Let's see. Okay, the financial piece. So as a part of our legal obligation to be in good standing as a nonprofit, I want to call your attention to our 990 tax form for you to review. Please take a look at it via the event link on our website, or I also have 2 hard copies if you want to take a look at it as well, so just find me to take a look at those. Okay, and now for the election of the board of directors. The Board of Directors has nominated a slate of nominees for election tonight by you, our members. They are Felicia Fabroth, if you'd like to wave. Mary Harper, if you'd like to wave. Tom Ha, do we have Tom Ha here? Okay, Tom. And then Naomi Schiff, over there at the back. And then Linda Taylor, I saw her. Maybe she might be out with the refreshments. Okay. Let's see where we are. Members may also make nominations at this time. Are there any nominations from the floor? Okay. If you are a member and have returned a proxy, your vote has been counted, so please do not vote now. If you are a member and have not returned a proxy, please vote in a moment. If there are no objections, I will present the slate of nominees for a vote. Felicia Fabroth, Mary Harper, Tom Ha, Naomi Schiff, and Linda Taylor. All right. All those in favor of the slate of nominees, please raise your hand and please keep it raised so that Mary Harper can count.
I count 20.
20? Okay.
With counting on walking.
Yeah. Anyone opposed to the slate, please raise your hand. Okay. I will, let's see. Where are we now? Okay, now we will add up the votes to tally. And I believe we have 82 signed proxies from folks, and we have the 20 in-person votes. And with that, we have, let's see, what is that? 102 votes for the slate and no votes against. So with that, the slate has been elected. This concludes our official business, unless there's any objection. And with that, our annual meeting is adjourned. And please stick around until 7 o'clock until we have our lovely presentation. There's some refreshments in the back.
Welcome to another Oakland Heritage Alliance in-person lecture. Thank you to the Chapel of the Chimes for their space. Tonight's lecturer is Arrol Gellner, and he's going to be speaking on Ready to Roll, his book about travel trailers. So Arrol is an architect with over 30 years experience in residential, commercial, and industrial.
That's now 40 years.
40 years. He graduated cum laude from UC Berkeley College of Environmental Design. His current work ranges from upscale homes, additions, industrial lofts in San Francisco to a 200-acre resort project in Shanghai, China. Gellner writes the nationally syndicated architecture column Architext and has authored many other articles. He has completed his third book with veteran photographer Douglas Keister. His books include Storybook Style, America's Whimsical Homes of the 20s, that's 1920s. Red Tile Style, America's Spanish Revival Architecture, and of course, Ready to Roll. His other interests include classic cars and music writing and recording. Please welcome Arrol Gellner.
I gave myself a better introduction than that. Thanks for all coming by, and Charles, thank you for that introduction. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of background on how I ended up doing this book, because I'm an architect and not a trailer expert. So I had written 2 books with Doug Keister, my co-author, who was the photographer on those 2 books. And we'd done the 2 books, which were, a real workout. And I decided that was enough authorship for me for a while, and I went off to China. I have a home in China, and I was there for the whole summer. Lo and behold, in the middle of that summer in China, I got an email from Doug Keister, and he said, you know, I had hired this author from the Smithsonian to write a book about the history of American travel trailers. I said, oh, that's great. He said, yeah, she's an expert. She's going to do all this research and all of that. And I said, well, that's fine. And then he said, except she's backed out and she's not going to do it. She wants to. So he said, I'll never ask you this again, but could you please write this book about the travel trailers? You know, I told him, I'm a gearhead, I'm a big car buff, but I really don't know anything about travel trailers. He said, well, you'll learn. So what could I do but say yes to it? So that's the story of why I authored the book that has nothing to do with architecture, essentially. Let's jump in. So this is where we've ended up. This is where we've ended up, but we want to see the story of how we ended up at this place. Doug's got all these fancy little. What else is going to happen? I got to thank Doug for having done all this stuff. So, if you think about, can everyone hear me? Do I need to use the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
Better.
Be better.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. You're going to have to forgive me because I tend to run around and gesticulate a lot. So, if you think about early travel trailers, places that people lived in, here's something that springs to mind right away. Anybody recognize what these are? Conestoga wagons, right. So from the westward expansion and the move across the country, people lived in these wagons and had them outfitted. And how many car buffs in here? Does anyone know the oldest car manufacturer in the United States?
Period.
Oh, okay, you may have me there. I was looking for Studebaker. It may be older, 1852, Studebaker. And Studebaker made its fortune on building Conestoga wagons. That's how old that company was. So Conestoga wagons, and we look at a couple other precedents. This is a Romany wagon. And the Romany, known as gypsies, I think it's no longer the term of art. But gypsies is what we know them as. They were itinerant workers. They would mend pots, do things like that. And these were the kinds of wagons that they lived in to do that. This is a Basque sheep herder's wagon, also used by the Irish in Ireland, this type of thing. Another case where people lived in something that was towed. Now, it's not exactly a trailer because a wagon has a long tongue. It's designed to be towed by animals. Trailer has a short tongue designed to be towed by a car. This is the interior of the Basque sheep herder's wagon. It looks kind of cozy, right? Yeah, except, see all this? This is canvas, so if you're out on the plains and it's minus 20 degrees outside, it's going to be minus 20 degrees inside. So it's not as cozy as you might imagine. Okay, now, sociologically, the country was changing around the turn of the century, the end of the 19th century, that is. 1872, Yellowstone Park was founded, the first national park. 1890, Sequoia National Park, also 1890, Yosemite National Park. This is an important inflection point because prior to that time, nobody really gave nature much of a second thought. It wasn't considered something valuable, something that should be preserved. But that started to change in the late 19th century. And then by the turn of the century, we got folks like Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, was a big outdoorsman type. Henry Ford and Thomas Edison used to go out camping and make a big deal out of it. You know, it's sort of the opposite of being ultra rich, is to go out and rough it, you know, in a tent. So there was this whole atmosphere of outdoorsmanship that hadn't existed before. Another thing that occurred is roads had been terrible up to just about the turn of the 19th century, the end of the 19th century. Mostly unpaved, rutted, didn't go anywhere. There was no numbering system. In 1913, let's see, what was this guy's name? I want to make sure I get it right. Carl Fisher, in 1913, came up with the idea of a highway that ran coast to coast. So it was the Lincoln Highway, and it started at Times Square, and it ended up at Lincoln Park in San Francisco. So this was the first coast-to-coast highway, which was paved, so there was no getting stuck in ruts and things like that. So what I'm getting at here is that suddenly being outdoors and traveling was becoming a thing. And by the way, you can interrupt me anytime if you have a question or shout or whatever you want to do. I love to take questions. Okay, so sleep in your car. What else were you going to do? There was nothing else that you could do. So if you wanted to travel and you were going to take the Lincoln Highway, you had a 6 or 7 or 8 day trip ahead of you in an old car. And you did have to sleep in the car. So you started to see the rise of these accessory companies that would come up with beds and things like that so that you could stay in the car overnight. It was pretty rudimentary, as you might imagine. Eventually, there were places that arose. This is Tim Cantura's site, Gainesville. This is 1919, where you would take this car that you had outfitted with a folding bed or whatever it was, and you could rent a spot or a tent, whatever you wanted. And this is the kind of the beginning of the camping culture. For that southern trip, they're not talking about the South, they're talking about Florida. So you have the advent of the snowbirds, you know, the people from up in the northern U.S. who got sick of the winter time and they all flocked down to Florida. And a lot of the time they would take these camping vehicles. So AutoCamp was one of the first companies that built vehicles for people to tow behind the car in which they could stay overnight someplace where they didn't have to sleep in the car. So you see that little guy that this car is towing. There it is, and there it is. So it is truly a very compact little trailer. But watch what happens. Boom. Beds fold out, these staves fold out, this ridge pole folds out, and bang! Look what you got. You got an instant house. So AutoCamp was one of the most popular of these types of these camping trailers. Okay. The problem with the AutoCamp trailer was, again, it's a canvas-sided trailer, so you really have no protection from being out in the cold and the wind and possibly even the rain. So this company, Covered Wagon, that's the name of the company, came up with a solid-sided trailer. It used masonite instead of canvas, so that you had actual walls and the wind wouldn't blow through and the rain wouldn't drip through. And that kind of demarcated a period where trailers started to become solid-walled objects instead of things with flaps. Covered Wagon was a company that was founded by a guy named Arthur Sherman in 1930. He showed that trailer, the previous trailer, we go back to it. He showed this trailer off at the Detroit Auto Show, and within a year, he was a national dealer. So this thing really took off. After this, the market started to turn toward these solid wall trailers. This kind of trailer is called a bread loaf. So they're giving away these covered wagon trailers. Who's giving them away? MA is. Oh, wow. Now we're getting into some real stuff. So, Glenn Curtiss was an aircraft engineer, and very famous. You know the Curtiss Aircraft Company, it's the same Glenn Curtiss. Brilliant engineer, and also a sort of the Elon Musk of his time, I guess. He came up with this trailer that was more than what the previous trailers had been. So, the Arrow car was a fifth wheel trailer. In other words, it had a regular car towing the trailer using a device that hadn't existed before, called a fifth wheel. But another thing that he did, which is an aircraft engineering kind of idea, is the structural frame of this trailer is different than anything previously, where there's no frame underneath the thing. The side of the trailer is a truss. So the entire side of the trailer is the structure that holds the trailer together. So, you know how a roof truss has those triangular struts? This trailer has the same thing. They're hidden away in between the windows. And if he wanted more windows, he could just put a cable in place of the strut and it would just go right in front of the glass. So you could have all the glass you wanted. The other thing that did is you didn't have a frame. There was no beam under the trailer, so there was no height. So the trailer could sit way down close to the road. So Wright was really thinking about this stuff. I'm sorry, Curtiss, not Wright. Okay, now, I always wondered why this device that holds the trailer, even on a modern truck, is called a fifth wheel. And this is the reason. Curtiss originally used literally a car tire with an inflated tire on it, clamped into the trunk of one of those old cars like that Packard you just saw. You see the clamps holding the tire? That's an inflated tire. That's the wheel. And he used where the axle normally is on a car, that's where the fifth wheel pin goes into. Because those were items that were easily obtained, and you could bolt them right into the trunk of any car, essentially. Yeah, hence fifth wheel. This is the inside of that Arrow car. Does it remind you of anything? Yeah, pretty much. It even looks surprisingly similar to a modern airplane with these overhead racks and all of this stuff. So there's a lot of airplane technology in this thing. There are something like, let me double check my number here, 12. There are 12 of these things left. He built a lot more of them than that. But they were so expensive, and this is the middle of the Depression. We're talking about 1928 when these were introduced. But once he started production, you know, Black Friday and all of that, and suddenly he's selling this extremely high-end product in the middle of the Depression. Nevertheless, some of these things were really spectacular. It's a 34 Hudson, I believe. This Arrow car, maybe you can see, same kind of thing. The truss struts are hidden between the windows, and if there is a strut going through the window, it's replaced by a cable. But you see how close it brings it to the ground. So there's a nod to aerodynamic styling, streamlining, which was a very big thing in the 30s. This is a rub rail, but this little thing here is pure decoration. See, it's one of those little winged wheels. That was a very common motif in those days. A little winged wheel and a fender skirt. So you can see where the trailer design was trying to, yeah.
Any idea how much that trailer weighed?
Those trailers were almost certainly 6,000 to 7,000 pounds. Yeah, they were not light at all. We're going to see some later that will surprise you in terms of how much weight they managed to save. Okay, we have an interior of this thing. What does this one remind you of? Yeah, it's actually modeled on a private railroad car. Yeah. Let's see.
So where do you sleep in those?
Usually there's a compartment at one end
Oh.
with a bed, and sometimes you didn't sleep in them at all. We'll see another one that was strictly for just getting places. This one here.
What year is that?
This is 1938. This was built for a fellow named Hubert Eaton, who was in this business. He owned Forest Lawn Cemetery. And he was a big outdoorsman. He didn't carry people remains around in this thing. He was an outdoorsman, and he wanted a really luxurious vehicle to get to his hunting places or whatever he planned to do. The unusual thing about this is he had this tow vehicle custom built as well. This was a man with plenty of money. So this is a 1938 Rio bus chassis with a completely custom body on top of it and a 12-cylinder engine, so this was not a gas saver. Here's the interior. So what you've got here is swivel chairs, cup holders.
Wow.
You thought that was invented in the 90s, huh? There they are. Roller shades on the windows. Back here there was a shower with running hot water. So this was a class act. Now, to go from sublime to the ridiculous, let's say, or to go from one extreme to another, this is a company called Hammer Blow Tool Company, and they put out, for people that couldn't afford that kind of rig, they put out plans on how to build your own trailer, and they furnished all the hardware, the tools, and so forth in order to do that. See, this was at the exposition in Chicago. A lot of people see this, and they order these plans, and they build the trailers. So note this color scheme, yellow and green. Here's one that someone built. So this was built by a groom for his bride on his honeymoon. There for his bride and him on So you see, he copied the Hammer Blow ad, the colors and everything. Gorgeous 38 Oldsmobile there as the tow car. And why would he do this? Whoops, what happened? Okay. Oh, that's the interior. Yeah, excuse me. Okay, surprise. It looks really rich in this photo at first glance. Look a little closer and you'll see that all this stuff is really just plywood. Remember, this is a home-built trailer. Somebody had to be able to build this in their garage. And so all the cabinet doors and everything is just plywood that's been routed or what have you. Something that you could do in a home trailer. But pretty nice for a home build. And you went, oh, this trouble for her, guess who? There she is, 1936, the bride. I think that's really sweet. Okay, now.
What did she think?
What did she think? Why, I don't know, can you tell? I don't know. She doesn't look that crazy about it. So, you know, by the late 30s, a little bit of an inflection point in this whole trailer thing. It was red hot in the 20s. It was already hot in the teens, red hot in the 20s. Started to get into the Depression. There's a little bit of an inflection point. I'm sorry, wrong button. I really like that. It's a very modern attitude. It's kind of the point where trailering starts to get this little bit of a tinge of, rough around the edges, down class sort of a feel to it. And you know, the media starts to have fun with this. You see, it becomes a place, a lot of the trailer camps that had been, you know, legitimate became in the Depression really places for people that were really down and out and were living in trailers because they couldn't afford anything else. And obviously these places turned into not necessarily really lovely camps. And then you had people renting out trailers for the homeless and things like that. So this is where the whole idea of trailer trash originated, when this image of the trailer started to decline a little bit. This is good. I don't understand 1930s humor, but this is 1930s humor. Rural camp, okay. How about this here? Yeah, weird. All right, you get this one? Trailers? Yeah. So back to the commercial stuff. Schultz was a pretty big manufacturer, and I include this slide here because you really see in this thing why they're called bread loaves. It couldn't look much more like a slice of bread. Why the rounded corners? What do you think? Yeah, it was just fashion, really. I mean, you'll see later on that they had to dispose of dealing, you know, with fashion because it was so expensive to do. Making things curved, especially compound curves like this, is expensive. And pretty soon, one by one, these trailers start to get more and more square. Okay, now this should start to look familiar. The thing about this trailer is this is a 1950s era trailer. This is when the material that the trailer was built of started to change from masonite, which had been the original material, to aluminum generally. This is actually not aluminum, it's duralumin. It's an earlier version of aircraft aluminum. And the reason was masonite was not that durable. You know, in the weather it started to fall apart and things like that, where the aluminum was very durable. So this is a Vagabond is the brand of this trailer. This company pioneered the 10 wide, 10 meaning 10 feet wide. Most standard trailers were 8 feet wide because the roads were 12 feet wide, and an 8-foot wide trailer was the maximum that was allowed. Vagabond is the company that went state by state and got the laws changed so you could pull a 10-foot wide trailer instead of an 8-foot wide trailer. Obviously the interior would be much roomier and so forth, so it was a marketing idea. And that really is the birth of what we called, intermediately we called it mobile homes. Now they're called manufactured homes. They don't like to call them mobile homes because they're not very mobile anymore. They're just transported once and they're set down. But having a 10-foot wide trailer eventually metamorphosed into having a 12-foot wide trailer and then into a 24-foot wide trailer, a double wide. So this is the genesis of that. Schultz, the latest thing on wheels. Okay, let's see. Oops, I'm on the wrong button again. Pardon. Okay, so because Vagabond has what became a standard in trailering, which is to have a sort of a Davenport across the back end of the thing, which would convert to a bed, fold-out bed in the night. So the floor plans of these things became pretty much standardized after a while. Lovely, lovely thing. This is a Pierce Arrow travelogue. Any car buffs recognize Pierce Arrow? Yeah. I mean, Pierce Arrow was higher than Cadillac back in the day. Really a beautifully made automobile. But by the middle of the Depression, not many people buying Pierce Arrows in the middle of the Depression, not even wealthy people. So Pierce decided, well, we've got all these auto manufacturing facilities and stamping presses and all this stuff. Why don't we try to market some trailers because it's such a hot thing? So what do? They build the best trailer you could possibly build, you know, fantastic quality and all of that. Within 2 years, they were bankrupt. They were completely bankrupt. It's a really sad story. This is a beautiful car and a beautiful trailer. Take a look at this. This is the interior. These fabulous quality. So, a sad story. Okay, now we're going to change gears a little bit and look at some trailers that you might find more familiar and more modern looking. A few people have mentioned Airstream trailers, and we're going to sort of see the genesis of all that. Anybody tell me the year? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, 34, 35?
Exactly, 34, right on the money. Yeah, it's a 34 Airflow. Both Chrysler Corporation built these under both the DeSoto and the Chrysler nameplates. And they came out in 34, and the engineers had been working on this car because they'd been looking into aerodynamics because it was such a big deal in the 1930s, streamlining. And the engineers had taken this average car, not this car, an average Chrysler car they took off the assembly line and tested it for aerodynamics, and they found out that it ran much more efficiently backwards than forward. Because the back is much more aerodynamic than the front of a car. And so Chrysler set the engineers to work on coming up with a car that was truly aerodynamic. And the Airflow was the result. And the Airflow was a complete disaster. People hated it. They thought it looked like a milk truck. They didn't go for it. But I think the die was cast, and after this point, things were generally restyled in some sort of aerodynamic fashion. Sometimes obviously airplanes, sometimes cars, sometimes typewriters, sometimes toasters. Sometimes it didn't make any sense at all. I've seen like old mimeograph machines that have speed lines on them. So the idea is basically you're using rational design based on aerodynamics instead of arbitrary, design that somebody thought was cute looking. This is I'm sorry, it's a Junkers biplane. So this Charles Lindbergh, this fellow over here is William Hawley Bolus. We're going to talk about him. Who was he? He was an aircraft engineer, again, who got into the trailer industry. He thought he had some ideas about how to improve the sorts of big, heavy, clunky trailers. You asked earlier about the weight of the trailers. And so Bolus had his own ideas about that. And this is what became the trailer known as the Bolus Teller. The model is called the Road Chief. Again, it has a duralumin skin, which is a patent aluminum that didn't corrode, and it's over an aircraft-style fuselage. So it has ribs rather than just being a box on a frame. So the thing is extremely light. It's as light as an airplane would be. So Bolus spent a lot of money on these things. So you asked about the weight. The weight of this is, I said the other one might have been 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 pounds. This is 1,100 pounds. It's just a super flyweight.
Does it have two wheels?
It has two wheels, correct? Yeah, they're sort of skirted. And then take a look at. Oops, I'm always on the wrong button here. Sorry. Take a look at this. It has kind of this Zeppelin tail end, and these triangular pieces that form the Zeppelin, they're called facets in the trailer industry, and it's one way that you can get a compound curvature without stamping it in a die, because stamping in a die is very expensive, but cutting facets out of triangles and then bending them approximates that sort of a shape. So you're going to see these facets in a lot of the next few slides. So Bolus tried a couple of different ones. Those were expensive trailers. This is the interior. They're very elegantly simple. The bed is back there with the two cool portholes in it. They were simple, but they were not cheap to build, unfortunately. So the sales price was pretty high. He tried downsizing. This is called the Bolus Teller Papoose, which was just a shortened version of the Road Chief. This thing sold for $750, which was, this is 1935, so $750 was not a bargain either, but it was less than the Road Chief had been. So, irregardless of all that, Bolus Teller closed in 1935. It couldn't make it. I've got to give a nod to this Packard Roadster. This gorgeous Packard Roadster is back here. It's a 34. What happened, however, as often happens, is that one of Bolus's dealers was a guy named Wally Byam. And Wally Byam saw that Bolus had gone out of business, had all the stamping machines and all the machinery they needed in his factory, and he bought them up, lock, stock, and barrel. And he started building his own trailers. And there is the very first serial number, the oldest known Airstream trailer. And so Wally Byam picked up from Bolus Teller and started building these Airstream trailers. Now, you can see it looks quite a bit different from a modern Airstream, but it still has sort of basically the same genetics. Family resemblance to Bolus, which slowly sort of drifted away. Byam started to make small improvements. For example, the Bolus Teller trailers had a door over the trailer tongue, which is a really inconvenient place for a door to get into the trailer. So Byam moved it around to the side where it's been in trailers ever since. So just these incremental little changes. Anybody recognize that car? Lincoln Zephyr. Lincoln Zephyr. That's a 36 V12 Lincoln Zephyr.
What was the gas mileage on those?
Yeah, V12, not good. Not the service cost was not that great either. You got 12 cylinders to deal with. Yeah.
Is this trailer still in existence?
This trailer was photographed with me and Douglas Keister in 2001.
Wow.
So I assume if it's not in a museum by now, it's still in existence. Yeah.
Where were you? Where is this?
This was someplace down in Central California.
Oh.
I can't remember the name of it. It was a tiny little town someplace.
How do you find out about these rare trailers?
I have to give Doug the credit for that. Doug sort of had the contacts because he's kind of an aficionado and he knows about the clubs and all of that stuff. So once one person in the trailer, bunch hears about it, it spreads like wildfire. So we had people, kicking the door in, trying to get into the foot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the interior of that Airstream trailer. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like you say about
Is that
the-
wood?
It's wood, it's birch. Yeah, it's varnished birch. I don't know the story with the louvers. I don't know whether that's original or not. It seems a little bit like.
Nice.
So the kitchens are really spectacular in some ways. Yeah, I always admire this trailer because sit and sleep back in that weird little pointy resemblance. I think that's really cool. Okay, that's the aft end view of it. Let me just go back for a second. You see these facets. As the years went by, they got fewer and fewer facets because it meant less and less fabrication, less expense, and so everything was always tending toward a box, basically. Okay, so this is sort of the antithesis of all that airstream stuff, a bunch of boxes.
I got a question. Did any
Yeah.
of the trailers have bathrooms of any kind?
Gosh, that's a good question. The early trailers did not. I think it was probably the 60s before they had bathrooms. But I can't tell you definitively the answer to that. Most did not. I never saw one. We stopped at trailers about in the 1960s. We didn't go any further than that. And I never saw one that had an onboard bathroom. Speak of the devil. Yeah, we would just as soon do without that bathroom. Okay, so this is yet another Airstream. It's called the Bambi. It was one of the smallest of the Airstreams. The interesting thing about this Bambi is that you see this little pipe sticking out here. They experimented with, you know, the way that Curtis had experimented with using trusses to support the trailer and make it strong. Bynum tried using essentially a spine. It's almost like a fish. It has a rigid pipe that goes down the center, and then there are these ribs that radiate off of it to form the trailer. And he thought that would be both cost saving and strong. But what happened was that the trailer's got these torsional vibrations going down the road, and so he had to give up on it, and he ended up using a regular ladder frame, like most trailers have. Okay, 54 Ford wagon back there, Country Squire. Wait a minute, 54. I think I disagree. 54 has 2 spinners, I believe. I told you I was a gearhead. Okay.
So what was the process of making this book? So you found the trailer and then the cars?
No, the cars we have nothing to do with the cars. The cars are the owner's actual tow cars.
Oh.
It's kind of, I should have made that clear. It's kind of a thing in the trailer world to have a car that's, if not the exact year of the trailer, then something, within a few years. And that's the reason you see all these old cars towing these trailers. No, we didn't pair them up at all. These are the cars that the people pull the trailers with. And later on, you'll see some even more, over the top matchy stuff. Oh, let me go back. 54 Mercury Woody wagon here. Okay. And I believe we're almost closing out Airstream here. This is a very late Airstream, I believe, 2001.
But it doesn't use the facets, right?
Right. This one, it may just be the photo. I think it does use the facets, but they found a way to use less and less. And now, if you see a modern Airstream, they almost look like a bread loaf again. They're very blocky looking. This interior looks pretty modern day now, right? All this Formica type of stuff and laminates and all of that. All kinds of interesting. Yeah. 58 Chevy, and this I believe is a in the interim, this gets so complicated now. Wally Byam, in between the time he bought out Bolus Teller, he worked for another company called Curtiss Wright, which was not the Curtiss Wright Aircraft Company. It was just Curtiss with one S, Wright. And they made trailers, and I don't know why they were called Curtiss Wright. And this is a Curtiss Wright trailer. And then Byam went on and bought out Airstream. So it's really complicated. But basically, this Wally Byam guy is the through line on all of this Airstream stuff. Okay, that's the theory of that. Previous trip. So now we change gears a little bit. Not yet. Oh, this is a 2001. You see, there's hardly any curvature left. This is the Safari. So that's essentially what the Airstreams look like now.
Do you know how long that one before was and how long this one is?
Let me see if I have that. No, I'm sorry, I don't have the length. They're typically around 17 feet. Some of them are longer.
Is that an air conditioning?
Yeah, that's an air conditioner. Right, exactly. Air conditioner, this awning, and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes things lose their charm, but you know they do. I don't know why. There's something less charming about it. Okay, we're going to change gears a little bit now. You had mentioned the teardrops. We'll look at a few of those. So some companies built teardrops, but a lot of them were actually home built as well. So Modernistic was a company that did the same thing that Hammerblow Tool Company did. They sold kits to build your own teardrop trailer. This is one of those Mechanics Illustrated things. I don't know if some of you guys used to read Mechanics Illustrated. They always had these far out kits in the back that you could send away for to build stuff. So that was one of those types of items. Okay. This, however, is a manufactured teardrop trailer. It's called a Gypsy Caravan, manufactured by Gypsy. Almost all teardrops have the same configuration. They have the galley in the back under a big giant hatch. Then there's a door in the side, and inside is essentially just a mattress, just a bed inside. So it's kind of a cool little space. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but the roof is sloping down, and you're kind of in a cocoon. So it's a neat little system. And actually, this kitchen is a pretty functional kitchen too. This is a home-built teardrop of the same type. The interesting thing about this one, the red color is an artificial leather called fabricoid, which used to be a big, fabricoid with a K, of course, which used to be a big material, or a modern material.
What's that name again?
DuPont Fabricoid. Yeah. So these are all built from kit plans from the backs of magazines generally. This is a trailer built by the Camp Master Company, and it has what they advertised as a lifetime aluminum finish. And this is a 1950 trailer, so that is a lifetime finish. Not many 1950 cars have a finish that lasts like that. Pretty spectacular. And of course, trailer people just keep them buffed up to the nines all the time. So,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is that door hinged? I mean, how does it close?
Yeah, this door is hinged way back there.
No, but the back door.
The back door.
Screen door.
The screen door.
Oh, the screen door. Oh, I think the screen door, see this little thing here?
Yeah.
It folds one time, and so everything stows away. It's one of those kind of things. Yeah, it's a little bit like that Camp Master where everything just folds out of its stuff. Yeah, everything you could want is in this little teardrop.
You need something.
Now we got a few really far off things coming up here.
Oh, wow.
This is all homemade.
That is cute.
Yeah, really, it is. It's just plywood and it's got some strips on it. They found some old wheels in the wrecking yard and there you go. I can't tell from this angle what kind of car that is. Anybody help me?
Pontiac.
Pontiac, okay. You know the year, 48?
Yeah, it could be 48.
Let's say it's
47.
Okay. Okay. And one more, again, a homemade. Tow car is a Chevrolet. So, people really got into some real intricate workmanship on these things. Okay, now here we have some sort of peripheral strange ideas that came up. This is called the compact sportsman. And the way it works is like this. First of all, it's not built out of wood, it's not built out of sheet aluminum, it's built out of fiberglass, and that's a brand new material for this era. During the 50s, they started to perfect the whole process of molding fiberglass and doing all that. And the great thing about fiberglass is it'll take any shape, and it's also very light, and it also very strong on top of that. So some guys really went nuts with this stuff. So I don't know if you recognize this. A car guy would recognize these as 52 Ford tail lights. So they're grafted onto this fiberglass body, and what happens is, wham, you get that. This extends up, and then one more time, you get the tent flaps. And so when the thing is collapsed and completely collapsed, you don't have a lot of wind resistance when you're towing this thing because it's only this tall, right? So it makes a big difference. I said the wrong one. That previous one, this is the compact sportsman. The previous thing is a Ranger, excuse me. Again, it would cost a fortune to make a shape like this out of steel or aluminum or what have you, but it's very cheap to do it out of fiberglass. So you can have really curvaceous forms made out of fiberglass, including a boat. So the way this works is you get to wherever you're going and you take the roof off of your place and you have a boat. If I had a candy bar, I'd give it away to whoever can identify that Studebaker's year.
51? 50?
50. That's
My
it.
dad had one. It was convertible, but I never saw it.
I owe you a candy bar.
Oh my gosh. Do I get to pick what type? I'm expensive.
Okay. And last but not least, here's the trail or boat. Trail or boat. Also fiberglass, not terribly attractive. Now we get into the sort of real 50s nitty-gritty stuff. This is a 1957 Comet trailer, and it's very similar to all the sorts of trailers that you probably remember all the way through the 60s. And in the 60s, they started to shave off all the curves and everything, and they became boxes on wheels. So this 57 Comet, I made a comment about trailer people previously about the matchy-matchy stuff. So practically every trailer that we photographed from the 1950s had a car that not only matched in year, but also in the paint scheme. It's just about standard. So this fellow's got his 57 Chevy, and he's got the matching colors on this. And I want to point out that the trailers, the designers of the trailers followed the auto industry in terms of styling. what was fashionable in autos was grafted into trailers in some form or other. So you have sort of an allusion to a tail fin on this trailer. You see? Chevy's got one. Comet's got one.
What does the sign on the door say?
Trailer trash.
Trailer trash.
What kind of motorcycle is that?
Oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't know anything about motorcycles. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody here can identify.
It's like the police,
That's not like a Briggs and
It's a
Stratton
pull-
motor, it's more like a
on
Cushman.
electric line in blue.
Oh, okay, all right. Thanks. So the Chevy's got a wraparound windshield, very big in 1957. Look at this. It's effectively a wraparound windshield on the trailer.
My father had a Trotwood. I think it was a 57.
Oh, sure.
56, yeah.
Trotwood. We photographed a few of those.
Yeah.
There's so many companies, and what essentially happened, and toward the end, there was a big shakeout, and it ended up being owned by 3 or 4 companies. All of them in, what is that town in Indiana? Everything is made in this one town in Indiana.
Elkhart?
Pardon?
Elkhart?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's Elkhart. Okay, that's the interior of that Comet. The other trailer thing was, people really enjoy doing up the interior, and they, for the most part, they end up looking sort of like, Mel's Diner inside. Yeah. It's kind of the way they go. Not much has changed there, really. Let me go back just for a second. You see that generally the interiors really haven't changed very much. I mean, the finishes come and go, but the arrangements pretty much stay the same.
How wide do you think that stove is then?
Oh, it's a distortion because of,
The lens.
this is a good time for me to point out how difficult it is to shoot the
Yeah.
interiors of a trailer. So Doug and I had to use these ridiculous extreme wide angle lenses, and they distort things really badly. So this stove is probably this wide. It's a good, I was talking to a lady over there who's in the real estate business, and she will recognize this from the way real estate people have to photograph the interiors of a house, and so this living room that's this big looks, like it's a mansion. The same thing is true here. There's really nothing we can do about it. Either we use a wide angle lens or you don't get a picture.
Our family told that Trotwood, my dad had a 55 Ford wagon, station wagon.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole family of 5, we're all set. We got something over our roof one way or the other.
What? Right. Okay. All right. We're coming to the end here, and fittingly, this is probably my favorite shot, my favorite trailer, my favorite car. This is a 1954 Travel Ease, and it's of the Can-Ham variety, so it's very curvaceous. But you see, again, although it has all these curves in it, there's no compound curve, so it's not expensive to produce these curves this way. This is just a flat sheet of metal that's bent, and where you're on the side here, you see those deviations. It's corrugated so that they could use thinner gauge of metal, and yet keep the strength. The corrugations keep it from doing what they call oil canning. Get these waves in the metal. But the side effect of that is it's just gorgeous. It's really a beautiful effect. And then one of my favorite cars in the world back there, it's a 53 Kaiser Manhattan. Beautiful, beautiful cars. Okay. So we sort of cut off at this era, Doug and I did, because we felt this was kind of the end of the classic era rather. But I have one more to show you. Not much like this was built after the 70s, I think. This, however, is a trailer that's called a twister. It was built by a couple of brothers named Jerry and Rod Haglund, way up in BC in some godforsaken town in British Columbia. But they really wanted to capture the spirit of those old 1950s and 60s era trailers. And so the twister has all the cues that you would expect, you know, the V motif, the two-toning. It's a pretty good pair with this 56 Chevy here. This is a Bel Air, you can tell because it has all this extra fancy two-toning on it, just like this one does. Here's the interior. It's kind of less like Mel's Diner and more like a ranch house interior. I don't know if you remember how the ranch house style used to have all these wiggly trims and things like that, and knotty pine and all that sort of thing. So we end on an up note. This trailer was built in the 1990s, so the golden age is not necessarily behind us. If you have any questions, feel free. Yeah.
That little one that was a kid, I still see new ones, right? I feel
Yeah.
like a few months ago I saw a shiny new little teardrop thing.
Yeah, I think it's such a practical thing, and it's relatively inexpensive. I'm sure they still build them. For the most part, this trailer stuff is on the wane because motorhomes are a more efficient way to get something around. I mean, the thing is like a trailer, but it has its own motor, and so you don't have the extra trouble of connecting into a hitch and all of that stuff. The gas mileage is better, and so this really was the golden age. It's probably not going to come back the way it did. Any other questions?
Is the book still available?
Yes, it is.
I bought your book in 2004. I don't recognize any of these pictures from the book, but it's been a while since I've read it.
Oh, yeah.
It's your memory.
These are all, look like they're different than from in the book, other than the fifth wheel. The
There-
first fifth wheel was straight out the book.
Yeah, there are two editions. There's an edition that came out about 3 years ago.
Oh.
It has a different cover. It has a cover of one of those bolus silver trailers. The old cover is the one you saw with the turquoise Mercury pulling that trailer. They're both still available, possibly, but I know that the late one is available, and you can just go to Amazon, ready to roll on Amazon, and it's still available. Anybody else?
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
if you, anyone's interested in seeing some of these in person,
Mm-hmm.
there's a concourse, there's a car show in Ironstone.
Yeah.
It's in Murphy's, California, up
Yeah.
in the foothills. And a lot of people, including this couple here, has brought their trailer there.
Oh.
It's in the fall and in September. And it's a beautiful car show, and then they also have a whole section of vintage trailers, and people stay there overnight.
Wow.
And they have them adorably decorated, and a lot of them let you go inside and look around, and a lot of them have matching cars.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's really a lot of fun.
So then the last Good Guys show added trailers, so they are now having a whole trailer section everywhere.
Wow, I'm glad to hear it.
And that's in Pleasanton, so not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's also a vintage trailer show during Modernism Week in Palm Springs in February.
Right. Okay. Palm Springs, we had discussed earlier with this gentleman that in Palm Springs is a very famous trailer park called Blue Skies, which has not travel trailers, but what we used to call mobile homes in just incredible and weird formations. Very, very interesting architecture. So that's a whole nother lecture. Yeah.
I don't know if it's still in existence, but there used to be a sort of a motel, but it was a collection of Airstream trailers in Bisbee.
Yes, right. Bisbee,
There's a place in Oregon near the McMinnville Museum called Vintages, and they have probably about 2 to 3 dozen trailers like these, and they're permanent now,
Yeah.
but they're all fixed up and you can stay in them for the night.
I see,
Called
so
Vintages.
it's like a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also Auto Camp, which is in Calistoga, and also in Santa Barbara. And they're
Okay, yeah, that's become sort of a thing as well. Yeah, yes, sir.
And then, I do a lot of work with Vintage Camper Trailers magazine.
Mhm.
And so you can find them online, and then they put off lots of trailer rallies every year. And they have open houses at the Trailer Fest rally. So if you want to see a couple hundred old trailers, you can walk into that.
Let me tell you, you know, we did these 2 books on architecture, and I thought that people with craftsmen and houses and storybook houses were house proud, but it was nothing compared to the trailer. It's spectacular. So I really encourage people to go and see these things. They're wonderful, wonderful folks. We really had a good time going all over the country to these meets and things like that. So, any other questions? Okay, it's been a joy talking to you.